And I am going to call the meeting to order. As soon as Commissioner Wheelock rounds the bend.
It's like my chair fit me. There we go. There's always tall people sitting in these
Jim and I were
chairs.
discussing a road problem.
All right. If we could all rise for the invocation, please. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great sadness that I let everyone know that Wendy Trude, our health officer and department head, lost her mother. And with that in mind, if we could all bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for mothers that are faithful companions and confidants even in the most difficult times. Mothers dedicate their lives to caring and providing for their children both physically and emotionally, and they always seem to know how to help their children overcome problems and thrive in spite of them. A mother's love is irreplaceable, which makes losing her so incredibly painful. Our hearts, our minds, our prayers are with Wendy Trude and her family this evening. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sarah, would you call the roll, please?
Klaus?
Here.
Kropa?
Here.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Maxbauer?
Here.
I show Crawford and Johnson as excused.
Our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the May 4th minutes? Hearing none, they stand approved. Any changes to the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting? I'll get this out. You'd think I'd had too much coffee today. Public Health and Safety Committee meeting minutes of March 2nd, 2016. They stand approved. Resource Management and Administration minutes of March 9th, 2016. They stand approved. Ways and Means Committee meeting of March 23rd. They stand approved. Next on the agenda is public comment. Sarah, if you would, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized, and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
At this time, this is our first opportunity for public comment. Would anyone like to make public comment? If so, please step forward and introduce yourself at the podium.
Frank Deturi, 2800 River Bend, Traverse City, Michigan. I'd like to read the memorandum that's included in your packet. Marsha Smith from Rotary Charities couldn't be here tonight. I'd just like to read this in public comment, please. In coordination with the Conservation Resource Alliance, Rotary Charities has been actively seeking funding partners to participate in the Bourbon River Dam Removal and Restoration Project. All of the foundations we have approached acknowledge the significance of this project to Grand Traverse Bay watershed and the entire Great Lakes Basin. However, many of the most likely funding sources for the Bourbon restoration now find themselves almost fully committed to helping resolve the water contamination issue in Flint. Currently, we have 3 proposals pending with high likelihood of success that could total slightly over $300,000. Additionally, we are entering into discussions with a strong funding source that participated in the earliest phases of the project for a grant of $500,000 to help bring the project to a successful conclusion. We anticipate that we will have decisions and hopefully commitments on all these grants before the end of 2016. It should be emphasized that all of these potential grants are contingent upon the financial contribution of both Grand Traverse County, the City of Traverse City, to this phase of the dam removal project. While we had hoped to be able to raise more funds to assist the dam owners with the removal process, we remain optimistic that we can continue to build private support for river restoration projects, including the design and implementation of a controlled, universally designed access plan for people of all ages and abilities to enjoy this tremendous natural resource. The restoration of the Boardman River is a legacy project for our region. We are honored to be able to assist in helping our local government bodies implement this project that will benefit the citizens of our city and county for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Anyone else? Norb, come on down.
My back's killing me, so I'm going to lean on this if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
My name is Norbert Tutlis. I live at 4565 Buckhorn Drive, Traverse City, Michigan. My subject tonight is the dams on the Boardman River. On the way here, I was thinking, what do you got to say that they haven't heard before? Nothing. But I got to thinking about an elected person we had at one time that, back in 2003, decided that it would be a good idea to go find some weapons of mass destruction. So without Congress's approval or the say-so of the people, he put us in a war that 13 years later we're still involved in, and we're developing world hate as a result of it. And you think, okay, well, what could you have done differently? Well, instead of one person deciding it, we could have gone to Congress. Congress could have gone to the people. I asked that to be done when the dams first came up, and various commissioners that were in office at the time said, we talked to our constituents and they want them out. Well, then they have a limited constituency, because I've talked to my constituency and they don't want them out. But one of them's already out. That was the cities. I can't do anything about that, except remind you that that didn't go well. And probably a lot of that water that came down there that's being flushed through the two dams now is now at the bottom of Boardman Lake, not helping things any. But I was thinking, I read a 118-page results of Todd Kalish, who's no longer around, and Mr. Tonello, who still is around for the DNR. And they talked about various things like archaeological sites. And they said there were like 33 of them in the Boardman River Valley. And I thought, 33, well, how did they, at the last meeting I went to, I asked a few people that, so well, how did the powers that be decide there was no archaeological sites on this Ottawa River that the Native Americans traveled for years and made their camps at and ate from and trapped on? Well, we walked the banks and we just didn't see anything. That's how they discovered it. Now, well, that bothers me a little bit, because I know there's something there, but if you don't look, you're not going to see it. Second thing that bothers me, we hear about from various people how this river is going to come out beautifully. Well, folks, it was a blue ribbon trout stream from Brownbridge Dam to Boardman Dam forever, ever since they delegated it at 70s. It was a natural river in that same area, and it was a top cold water fishery. Isn't going to become may or may not continue to be as the temperature of the river drops, and you can see what's been going on in the lake with cold water disease. We're going to introduce fish into this river that are going to have eels, fungus, diseases that are going to affect our Brownbridge and our brook trout that have been in there for years. We're going to tremendously alter what was a useful river before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tutlis. Anyone else? Seeing no one. Next is approval of the agenda. I have one addition. It is a housekeeping matter. I would like to add the administrative correction to the MERS plan agreement under number 10, old unfinished business.
I have an addition as well.
Commissioner
To be
Crawford.
added under old business, I guess would be number 2.
All right.
I would like a request from Civil Council regarding the state animal control code.
All right. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'd like to remove item 9B, the Community Corrections Amendment to the Staffing Plan.
All righty. Anyone else? All right. I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
I will support.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next is our consent calendar. Ms. Sarah.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive and file. 1, Wexford County Resolution supporting the prevention of furtherance of expanding the definition of waters of the United States Resolution. 2, Wexford County Resolution opposing House Bill 5016 regulation of public right-of-ways. 3, resolutions in support of House Bill 5578 dark store bills from Blair and East Bay Townships. 4, Board of Public Works Finance Committee minutes of March 2nd, 2016. 5, Conservation Resource Alliance Project Managers Team Meeting Draft Notes of March 4th, 2016. 6, Land Bank Authority Minutes of March 9th, 2016. 7, Commission on Aging Minutes of March 15th, 2016. 8, Northern Michigan Community Action Agency Minutes of March 17th, 2016. 9, Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Draft Minutes of March 17th, 2016. 10, Health and Human Services Board Minutes of March 24th, 2016. 11, Monthly Parkland Report, Conservation District. 12, Monthly Road Commission Activity Report. 13, County Staff Report for May 2016. B, approvals. 14, resolution in support of House Bill 5578 dark store bill. 15, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office VHF radio declared as surplus. 16, April claims summary. 17, budget adjustments. 18, Central Records clerical and records agreement.
Would any member of the public like any item removed from the consent calendar? Any commissioner? Staff? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Dr. Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Wheelock to approve the consent calendar. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on our agenda, special orders of business, Boardman project update. Frank, Kimberly, and Casey.
Good evening. My name is Frank Deturi. I chair the implementation team, and we're here tonight for an update on the project that all of you know quite a bit about. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes. Thank you, Frank.
Sure. Part of the team that's here is Kim Belke and Casey Russell from Conservation Resource Alliance. Kim's project manager, and Casey is communications manager. Dan Devon from AECom is part of the design team. So if there's any point in the presentation that you have a question or clarification, just let us know, and we'll try to get those questions answered. And if not, we'll see if we can get those questions answered for you eventually.
And I'm not going to keep twisting my head back and forth. If any commissioner has a question, just feel free to chime in and ask Frank.
Thanks for having us tonight, and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Commission, Kim Belke would come up and we'll start the presentation, and like I said, and any time through the presentation, just ask questions and we'll answer.
Hello. Thanks again for having us here tonight to give you an update. I thought I'd start out with referring to the facts and questions information that you have in your packet. The implementation team has a number of working groups, and one of those groups is the communications team. And so right now they're working on a few different things. First off, thank you to Jen DeHaan for participating in the communication team meetings and also your input on those FAQs. That's been very helpful and we appreciate it. So along with those FAQs that have been developed, also postcards will be sent out to the landowners adjacent to Boardman Pond. We also have developed a communications plan. This plan outlines outreach to property owners adjacent to the pond and other businesses and residents in the project area. The team has developed all of these tools to just help communicate the overall project to landowners as we're gearing up for hopefully a 2017 construction timeline for Boardman Dam. Those postcards and letters to landowners will be mailed before Memorial Day. And then adjacent landowners will receive a postcard with a request to meet with them to discuss the impact of the project on their property and post-dam removal conditions, if they wish, if they're interested. Do you have any questions about those materials that were in your packet?
No?
Okay. And that communications plan, it's kind of an evolving document, and so that can also be found on our website as it continues to develop. So those renderings, AECOM developed these actually. This photo is of the current conditions if you're near Lone Pine Trailhead looking downstream towards the dam. You can see we have standing water there, obviously. During construction, this is what it's expected to look like. This would be 2 to 3 years after construction, and then 5 to 10 years. So you can see some similarities to the Brown Bridge quiet area. I think this last photo, it's evident how, we can see a recovered stream. This offers improved recreational and ecological opportunities. This will be a positive addition to our nature reserve, and it will also relieve Grand Traverse County of owning an aging dam that's really no longer able to be used for its original intended purpose.
Kim?
So just to give you an overall update.
Kim, can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you're showing the picture of what we could expect in 5 years, by chance, how does that look compared to, has it been 5 years since the Brown Bridge Dam?
Close.
It's been gone? How's that compare to what it looks above stream there, above the old Brown Bridge Pond? Is it close to what you're seeing there for?
I think this is
growth?
close to what we're seeing throughout the former pond area at Brown Bridge. Are you talking above, upstream of the project limits at Brown Bridge, where we still have some
maybe
slumping banks?
Maybe. Is there more damage like up past our limits of the pond?
So, great question for the next slide. At Brown Bridge, there's going to be some woody habitat projects done with Grand Traverse Band and NRCS this year, actually, in the fall. And then there will be upper impoundment channel work, I think through the area you're referring to, late summer 2016. And that's utilizing those, you might have to correct me, they're called supplemental environmental funding from the settlement.
Okay.
So more floodplain will be created through there, 40-foot wide floodplain. Those 5-foot high vertical banks, those will be taken down. You'll have some floodplain areas, and then that will be revegetated as well.
Was that all like part of the backwaters of the old Brown Bridge Pond? Is that why the river cut its way through there, or was that excavated to where it's at today?
No, that was, I guess you could say it was part of the backwaters. I mean, the river was higher, slower, and wider
Right,
through there.
As it picked up speed, it eroded that down.
Yes.
So are we going to be seeing more of that in the lower part of the river when the rest of the Boardman Dam comes out?
In the lower part of the river.
When the Boardman Dam comes out, there's still some backwater there, isn't there? That, sure, that'd be fine.
Very good questions. Part of it is the difference in the approach that was utilized at Brown Bridge versus Boardman. Brown Bridge, because of access constraints and cost implications, there was the uppermost stretch where you see those high banks right now. A passive restoration approach was used where it allowed the river to grab those sediments and move it down into the project area where they could then pull it out of the river and manage those sediments on site. But they weren't able to go up and do any of the floodplain work that Kim was talking about that would have essentially, like I said, lowered those banks and stabilized them. With Boardman, we have a little bit different scenario. We have better access. Additionally, the impoundment with being drawn down back in 2007, the channel upstream has already stabilized itself. So the limits of our project go up through the entire impoundment and go to a section of channel that has been stabilized since the drawdown in 2007.
Okay, thank you.
Other happenings at Brown Bridge, the Grand Traverse Conservation District, they've been hosting work bees there for planting, I think, for the last 3 years. And then just this last spring, they did another one and planted 1,500 seedlings. Cass Road Bridge, the construction for that is underway through contracts between MDOT and Davis Construction, and then the Road Commission and Northwest Designs Group. And I know Jim Cook is here if you have questions about that project. Their target date is early September for opening the road back up to traffic, with full completion of the bridge project by December 1st, 2016. The construction cost of the bridge was $2,872,000. That is funded by MDOT. Of course, there's the 5% local match that the Road Commission is paying for, and the Road Commission is also covering the construction, engineering, and staking costs. And then parallel to this, the Road Commission is doing some Keystone intersection improvements this summer. While the road is closed, they're going to be addressing geometrics, stacking, and signal improvements there at Keystone to accommodate the increased traffic that may result from it being truly a 2-lane road and bridge instead of the 1-lane bridge that we have right now. And I know you've seen this slide before, but I put it in there. You can see north is on our left. So the number one item that had to be done in order to prepare for Boardman Dam removal is indeed building Cass Road Bridge. And so you can see on the far left there that number one is build Cass Road Bridge in the original river location. And I know a lot of you probably know this as well. That was where the original Boardman Dam was built back in 1894. And actually 2 or 3 weeks ago, the bridge construction crews, they ran into some concrete remnants of the old fish ladder type structure there. So progress is being made. Do you want me to go through this, Ariel? I know that most of you have seen this before. We will have roughly a 60-foot wide river channel with a 40-foot wide floodplain. AECOM is estimating about 290,000 cubic yards of sediment to be managed through here. We'll be restoring about 1 3/4 miles of river. And again, restoring this natural, original river channel means, ideally less maintenance in the future. Go back to what was there before. So where are we at with Boardman Dam removal? Design is 100% complete. Both the DEQ and DNR Natural Rivers program staff are reviewing those permit applications. The Corps of Engineers and EPA are collectively providing $8 million for construction. Carl Platz had reported that last fall. Implementation team grants are funding the full design, permitting requirements, bid documents that are needed. And that includes about We did have to do some additional design to meet the Army Corps kind of specifications for their construction projects. So we're at about 1.4 million for the design work. And I believe I have the numbers right here. That includes $1,165,000 from grants, from CRA grants, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Sustain Our Great Lakes Program, Great Lakes Fishery Trust, DNR Dam Management, also Rotary Charities, and then also $225,000 from the Grand Traverse Band. So the goal is for the Army Corps of Engineers to bid that project out this summer with a target start date of by spring 2017. Sabin Dam removal design is close to 30% complete. The remaining field investigation, design, and permit application work will be funded under implementation team grants in 2016 under Work Authorization 6. Now that scope of design is going to cost $453,000. $49,000 of that is covered by Grand Traverse Band, with the rest covered by grants from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Sustain Our Great Lakes Program. So if that follows schedule, the permits and the bidding process for that dam could happen in 2017, and the target construction timeline for that could be 2018. So I know a lot of you are familiar with the implementation team and its makeup, but I thought I'd put this slide in here just as a reminder of all the entities, local, state, and nationwide, that are involved in this effort. The IT continues to meet monthly, and then we also have a number of working groups. Thought I'd just give you a quick overview of what they're all doing. There's a fish passage team. Right now, they're exploring options for facilitating public discussions on migratory fish passage. And this pertains to different migratory species of fish being allowed or not upstream into the Boardman River. So there's some funding that is needed to help fund this process that's being searched for this year, and ideally, those discussions would happen in 2017.
What happens if the funding falls through?
Well, I guess we don't like thinking that way. I mean, it's $25,000. We're looking at a cost for hiring a facilitator. So, and I think a portion of that $25,000 has been raised already, and we just started. So, to give us the rest of the calendar year to search for those funds is the goal.
Well, I mean all the funding.
All the funding for
the Sabin, there's a match that Grand Traverse County has to put in, and the city, I mean, you know, the sentence here, while we had hoped to be able to raise more funds to assist the dam owners in the removal process, we remain optimistic, you know, that we can move on. And I appreciate the optimism and the work by Rotary Charities, but, you know, we had written an RFP to have the county have its own fundraiser. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, the answer to my question is, if the funding falls through, we're on the hook for it. So Marcia Smith stood up at the meeting, at the podium, and said, no, we've been here from the beginning. This is a Rotary Charities project, and we're going to be here to help you. And now I'm reading, while we had hoped to raise more funds, ultimately, when this falls through, it is the taxpayers of Grand Traverse County that pay for this. And either I think we should have our own way and be able to go on with our own fundraisers to try to cover our citizens, or we just need to have a definitive date when they can tell us we're done. You know, we've exhausted every avenue. While we've tried, we haven't been able to be successful. It's not to say that I think that they're not trying. I think they're trying. Absolutely. But, you know, I think everybody's tapped dry. This is like a $20 million plus project. You can only get so much money from so many people. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the project, there's extra dollars. Then we have to get, you know, now we have a $25,000 thing because we need this. And we all know about the dollars that come with the restoration afterwards. I mean, they're not secured. This isn't a completed project. I mean, this, even in Frank's own words, we have 25 years down the road before, as Ron will point out, the area around the river is the way that we want it to be. And that's in continued cost and monitoring and invasive species and all kinds of things. I point out the city of Traverse City. I mean, I hate to bring up the Brown Bridge Dam failure, but I'm going to bring up the Brown Bridge Dam failure because it's still going on. The DEQ just denied the city of Traverse City $180,000 that was set aside to work on stabilization and restoration of sections of the river that was destroyed by the dam breach. So now the city has to come up with funds. The county, this is a never-ending chain of funds. This project will not be done when the project's done. It's an evolving ecosystem. It's a river. It's got a lot to do. And the county somehow got themselves into this. And I think it's very naive to think that if we come up with our funding match for Sabin that we're done. I mean, just
Say that
ask
last
the
part.
homeowners with destroyed property right now, if they're done, because they're not. And the city was just denied by the DEQ their funding for that.
Oh, is that from the Record Eagle article that you're reviewing?
Yeah, but then I talked to my friend who's on the city commission just to make sure what was going on.
Okay, so can I jump in and just
yes,
respond to that
please.
item? Okay, so, yeah, there was some talk of a rejection of 180,000 for,
It was for the stabilization and restoration of the riverbank.
okay, now that is being applied, that is that environmental supplemental work that I referred to with the Brown Bridge site, where they're going immediately upstream of the impounded area and creating floodplain, ridding of those eroding stream banks and stabilizing the stream. And that was a DEQ decision to reap the highest ecological benefits for the river in response to Brown Bridge Dam removal. So that funding, it's hard, you can't just stick it on the river anywhere you want. It really, it was part of the Brown Bridge settlement. It had to be applied to, that vicinity of the river. There has to be requirements and guidelines with all the funding that we work with.
All the groups that set up the funding and worked so hard on this project could never in a million years have foreseen an engineering problem that caused a failure. It's not the fault of the fundraisers, it's not the fault of the people that put the effort into this, but ultimately something failed and that dam was breached and people lost their homes. Jim, I'm going to need you to help me out on this, but the culverts on South Airport Road, their status quo is at about 60 to 65% capacity, isn't it? Probably. Yeah. We still have 2 more dams to remove. I mean, the likelihood of some sort of flooding episode or sediment problem with South Airport Road is very high. We all know that sits low. I mean, everybody will agree it's not a great design. That's why we don't want a culvert design for a bridge going over a river. You look no further than Medalley Park. The birds actually swim on the lawn there when it rains or the snow melts. That's how low it is in the flooding. And it's so much so a concern that I sit on the local planning team with our emergency services, and one of our scenarios is the loss of the South Airport Road culverts. Because we need to have an emergency plan in place for our first responders and our citizens. I don't think it's if it goes, I think when it goes. So to me, this project is not just the funding that we're looking at now. We need to prepare and preserve our county general fund as much as we can towards these extra expenses. Nobody ever thought the Brown Bridge failure was going to happen, and it has cost them extra money. I mean, you would admit that, right? We have nothing in place for the county with 2 dams if something happens.
Okay, so the Brown Bridge dewatering event, what we're doing at Boardman Dam for that removal, the dewatering method is completely different. Completely different.
Well, I hope we learned.
It is, most of that pond is being drawn down through a siphoning system, literally pumped over the core wall, the earthen berm, into what will be the new river channel under our new river, our new bridge.
I've seen all those engineering plans with the large circular tubes that are sucking the water and fish out and putting it over into the new channel.
Well, there'll be screens to help with the fish, yes. So the dewatering method is completely different for Boardman Dam removal. We will be developing a river channel at that core wall, and then also an auxiliary spillway, an extra channel for water to go at that core wall, while the powerhouse and the water control structure are still sitting there.
So we
You know,
didn't
we
do
have,
this on
we
the
have more
Brown Bridge Dam?
room, so
We didn't do these things on the Brown Bridge Dam?
at Brown Bridge, everything was in one spot. The dewatering structure, the current river channel, the future river channel, the water control structure, that was all in one spot.
I don't think we have the proper coverage for the citizens of Grand Traverse County on this, either through the taxes that they pay for when something happens and we all of a sudden have to come up with an extra $100,000 or $25,000 or $50,000, because now we need an expert to do a study on the restoration of the wetlands that's left behind or whatever. I mean, the scope of this project is overwhelming, and we really do not have any recourse for when South Airport Road fails.
Well, Dan Devon, I'm going to put him on the spot, he could likely talk about the South Airport culverts. Are you worried about those in response to dam removal in general?
Well, things are going to raise. I mean, I think it's logic. It doesn't, every year, our culverts fill more in South Airport Road. Every year we have sediment changes. Every year, Logan's Landing, there's a reason that building's still there. It's because once you take it down and build a new thing, you can't get the proper insurance for it. They're grandfathered in right now with the way that the building is. We have a group coming in trying to work out putting a new business in Logan's Landing, and that's challenging as it is, but we don't really have any kind of proof. I'm just waiting for proof that somebody will say, we guarantee you South Airport Road will not collapse and flood, and if it does, we're going to cover you, because but that's all we need. We just need to protect the county. We can't be the city with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against us and citizens that lost their house. We had at least one house condemned. Am I right? Did one city residents lost their house?
That actually, I can't answer that one.
Yeah. And I think that there were great people with great intentions at Brown Bridge and boards that sat here and listened to the entire thing. But the dam breached and flooded in a 12-hour period, and a lot of people's lives were changed forever that day.
I would certainly agree with you on that. Kim tried speaking to the differences between Boardman and Brown Bridge. To be honest with you, they're two totally separate dams, they're two totally separate sites, different conditions, different designers, different contractors. There's a lot of differences. But rather than speaking to those differences, really as far as coverage goes, from a design standpoint, you've hired our company to do a design. We've done a design according to industry standards. We also have insurance requirements that we've had to meet in order to do the work on the project and move it forward. So, yes, we carry some liability. Whoever the contractor is has to have insurance on the project. They will carry some liability. So, as far as risk, yes, there's risk. There's risk with going forward with the project. Is it any riskier than keeping the dams? That's really a tough thing to say right now, especially given the condition of the dams. The trash racks on the dams right now, there's currently no method for cleaning those because the equipment has been sold off. We are having issues being able to maintain appropriate water levels within the impoundments because of that. So, I mean, the county has already taken on a lot of risk for these projects. As far as moving forward and removing them, quite frankly, in my opinion, personally, I would say that you are looking at alleviating a lot of that risk in the long term. As far as your economic benefits and in terms of how fast the river is going to respond and you're going to see growth within your bottomlands, you're right. That could be 5 to 10 years. It could be 20 years, 50 years before you get old growth forests coming in. But you're going to realize the benefits of not having those structures there and having to maintain them much, much faster than that.
I think the big concern for me is there's a lot of what-if scenarios, and you can only mitigate your risk so much. I understand that. You do the best you can, people have the best of intentions, and we try. But as soon as we get into a PPA with the federal government, I'm concerned about the loss of local autonomy, about the voices for our citizens who may get impacted, about our voices on our general fund and how it might get impacted. And there was supposed to be a lot more partnership in the project partnership agreement, and I'm concerned about that whole process and where it leaves us when inevitably some other cost comes up, or we go to do something, we find out that, oh, we're going to need more dollars for this. And the project, I understand your part and the liability lies with you, but I'm really talking about afterwards. What's left when the ponds are drained down? What's left when we create, well, it's not really creating a new river because it's where the river used to be. Really, we're filling in a created river. But, you know, there's a lot of what ifs on this scenario, and those are the things that I hear from people that are very concerned about what happened in Brown Bridge. Many of them have friends or family members that were impacted, and now they hear we're removing 2 more dams. And I can tell them we don't have a lot of say in this because we accepted money from the federal government, and it is now a U.S. Army Corps project with very little say from the local entities that are a part of it. And, you know, I can't do anything about it now. This train has left the station, and I don't want it to be an I told you so situation. I'm just saying there's a lot of possibilities out there, and I just wish one commissioner would have brought it up 20 years ago when this project started, or 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago before the Brown Bridge disaster. And we're just not hearing these voices, so I'm the voice for that, you know, that annoys everybody that's part of the project right now. But I think somebody should say that there is a potential for South Airport Road to wash out. There is a potential for sediment movement. There is. I've researched river restoration projects all over the country. There has been significant sediment changes that was not projected by the people that were involved in the projects, and that has benefited or hurt the communities that it impacted. We're dealing with a very fragile area. The area between Brown Bridge Dam and South Airport Road is subject to all kinds of changes right now. Once you remove the dams, it becomes a wild card, I think. There's a reason those dams were put in. And it wasn't just for power. There's a reason those dams were put in. Logan's Landing is sinking, as is.
I guess I would, first of all, talking in regards to the reasons the dams went in, I'm not sure that they were put in to save South Airport, because South Airport, I believe,
No,
was
it
constructed
wasn't
in the 70s.
there. It was there to try to gain control over a natural, free-flowing river that we couldn't predict where it was going to go or what it was going to do.
I could go through the
Well,
geomorphic analysis.
we're
and
letting
discussion.
go of a lot of control.
Rather than why the dams were put there, you know, we can debate that all night. I would like to move the presentation along,
Yeah.
please.
Before the PPA is brought to this board, there will be somebody that will sit down and talk with us about it before we sign away our local autonomy.
I would certainly agree with that, and I believe that's part of the process that's required from the Corps. I mean, absolutely, before the Corps signs anything with you, they've got to communicate that with you. So I would anticipate that that's part of that process. I don't believe there's any intention or capability to move through a PPA process without the inclusion of the county. Honestly, much like the process leading up to where we're at now. Like I said, I'm a contractor of the county.
Please continue.
So just to add, the Fish Passage team is taking it upon themselves to try and fund the public discussions next year. They're taking it upon themselves. They're not asking the county for that.
Kim, you need to speak up just a little bit. You have such a very soft voice.
Oh, sorry. Okay, the monitoring team. We've been monitoring aquatic insects upstream and downstream of the dams for the last 5 years. That is continuing. And we've added amphibians and reptiles upstream and downstream of Boardman and Sabin dams as well. And that is funded through implementation team grants, at least through 2018 and possibly through 2020. So. The monitoring team is developing a monitoring plan that's required of the joint permit application for Sabin Dam. The communications team, you have the materials that they're working on right now. And then Rotary is leading the private philanthropy effort to help with the local match requirement associated with the PPA, and you obviously have a memo from Rotary about that as well. So again, the take home from this slide is that a lot of people are taking responsibility and trying to help you as the owner of the dam to get this thing done. So any other questions or comments about?
Any additional questions? Thank you, Kim.
All right.
Just when does the PPA agreement come before the Board of Commissioners?
That's a question for Carl Platts. I know that there was a joint meeting in March between the tribe, the city and county, and the Corps to talk about the PPA and the details of it. I think what you should expect next is actually, I did include a few more reference slides just in case. Before the PPA, there will be an agreement needed for Boardman Dam removal. That's a different type of agreement. It's a local agreement to provide right of entry, real estate, so forth, for them to go on the property with their contractor and remove that dam. But the timeline of the PPA, I understand that there's more working meetings in progress, and that's a question for the Corps of Engineers. I think their goal is, 2016, by the end of 2016, to ideally have that.
Okay.
If we would like to indeed tie into bidding out Sabin Dam removal next year.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
It sounded like, Alyssa, like you had some concerns regarding the design. I think the design team would be happy to go
No,
through.
I don't have any
Well,
concerns.
a lot of the
about
points that you talked about were specifically referenced to design that are put together by engineers and scientists that spend their entire life designing and learning skills of the way rivers work. So if you have any misconceptions of the way that project might work, we have folks on the team, engineers, biologists, people that do this kind of work that could help answer some of those questions.
And I
Happy
don't have
to.
any problem with the design. I have problems with the aftermath and the plan B if something goes wrong. That's our job, is to cover if something goes wrong.
I think I understand as part of the design, there are those redundancies in design that incorporate lower risks. So I think that does kind of work its way back towards design concerns. If you're concerned that what's going to happen during the process and you don't want it to happen again, or what happened at Brown Bridge, then those are design concerns and we can address those. If you're asking about speculation for things that aren't part of that design, like exactly where the wetlands will be and such, we can talk about those things too. There really aren't design of the dam removal, but we have a team of scientists that understand how rivers respond, and we can respond to those questions too. We'd be happy to.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And do we have an update, Jen, on our additional liability policy that we have to purchase because of the dams?
We are currently looking at that. I do have a policy that I've received. We're reviewing it with legal counsel. We're going to get an environmental lawyer to take a look at it. Hopefully it'll be similar to the coverage that the city had during the Brown Bridge episode.
And those are the costs that I'm talking about. They add on. It's separate from this project.
Correct.
There's additional costs that we incur consistently and will continue to incur for 5, 10, 15, 20 years because of this project. Again, nothing to do with the engineers, CRA, nothing. I'm talking about, we have to think about that. I'm concerned about the Cass Road Bridge Agreement, the clause that says that Grand Traverse County is responsible for any road damage that happens with South Airport Road. Again, this is totally separate from, I'm not talking about the river restoration project, but the problem is no one asked about these things when they first decided to go into the river restoration project, and before you know it, we have to hire an environmental lawyer and take out an extra policy, and we have to fund some sort of study or bring in something. And that's of concern to me. My concern is when, although their best efforts, Rotary Charities is unable to get as much dollars as we need, and we have to somehow find that in our general fund. These are all concerns that I would like to see addressed better, and certainly before we're ever asked to sign a project partnership agreement, we need to have an idea of what our auxiliary costs are going to be. We did not set aside dollars in this year's budget for an environmental lawyer or an additional policy to cover the county in the event of a failure of some sort on this. That's concerning to me. And I don't want to be surprised in the 2017 budget with the other surprises we've had attached to this project. And that's where it's coming from. I have every bit of faith in Dan Devon's group, URS. They're doing great. This is not about that. This is about the other things. But even better, it's about a citizen that lost their house. And we don't want to see one more person have that happen. And someone needs to say that and be protected.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda, items removed from the consent calendar. There are none. Number 9, department action items. Parks and Rec, request to amend the ordinance. We have our Parks and Rec director here, Ms. Erickson.
Hello. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Chris Erickson, Director of County Parks and Recreation. Last year, this commission voted to take the Twin Lakes Park rules and fold them up into an ordinance. I guess there's no better way to say that. The reason was because, and the reason still is, because we wanted the park rules at Twin Lakes, as opposed to our other park rules, to be enforced as civil infractions, and to be able to empower our rangers, deputize them to be able to enforce those rules, particularly with regard to the swimming within the designated swim area rule at Twin Lakes. So this commission voted to put that into an ordinance. It became a resolution, and an amendment was proposed. I'm here on behalf of our Parks and Recreation Board, which during its meeting last month voted to amend that ordinance, particularly what we call the beach rule, one of the beach rules. And you have that on page 102, what the amendment is. The amendment is that now individuals will be able to come to the park, and if they're appropriately attired in a wetsuit, which is defined here, they will be able to swim in Twin Lakes. We've worked with several of the individuals who used to enjoy swimming at Twin Lakes, the responsible swimmers who wore wetsuits before, I think often. Some of them do underwater photography, some of them just enjoy using the lake. So that's where this amendment was born, from where this amendment was born. And tonight we are asking that it be amended. The amendment language is indicated in bold-faced italicized type. Under definitions, the wetsuit is defined as a wetsuit covering the torso from neck to the tops of the thighs and constructed of 1.5 millimeters or thicker of neoprene. The actual rule itself is unlawful acts. It is unlawful for a person or persons to do any of the following at park property. Item D is to violate the following park property beach rules. Number 3, swim in any other area than a designated swim area which is designated by buoys. The new language is unless that swimmer is wearing a wetsuit as defined in 1.1 definitions G1, which I just read to you, and each time prior to swimming has signed and dated the waiver form, which shall be located and accessed by the swimmer at the beach entrance.
I would move to that it be resolved the Board of Commissioners amends County Ordinance Number 31 as presented in our packet. Is there support?
I'll second.
Discussion. Commissioner Wheelock.
We all know that I don't agree with this part of the park rule in any fashion whatsoever.
Yes, we do.
If we are going to amend the ordinance to allow swimming at Twin Lakes, we should open Twin Lakes for swimming, period. There should be no discussion beyond that. The designated swim area that down there is barely big enough to get your feet wet. It's certainly not big enough for an adult to swim in, and the idea that we are restricting the access of this body of water under any circumstances is simply unacceptable to me.
Anyone else? Commissioner Klaus.
I didn't vote for this amendment either, but I see now that we're going to have a park ranger possibly having to know how much 1.5 millimeters is of thickness for a wetsuit, or if this person should go out and not be a successful swim, maybe we'll be on the hook that they didn't have 1.5 millimeters. Maybe they only had 1.25 millimeter wetsuit, but we let them out there. I don't want to put the park rangers at that risk of making a judgment call.
Dr. Lathrop?
Educate me, please, about wetsuits. Do they make you buoyant?
Yes. May I?
Yes. Help me out, Commissioner Max Bauer.
Being the swimmer
You know.
that I am, and owning a wetsuit. Yes, they do. First of all, for anyone watching that does not know, we had 3 young men drown in a 4-year period of time out at Twin Lakes. And the drownings were somewhat similar. The Parks Board, as a result, felt it necessary to tighten the swimming regulations, the ordinance at that lake. And I would point out that there has not been a drowning since the Parks Board did that. That having been said, we have some open water swimmers who would like to be able to swim in the lake. And they came to the Parks Board, and we had to have in our minds a way for a park ranger to be able to enforce the regulations that we have in place. And we determined that a wetsuit would be a way to enforce the swimming rules at the beach. Now, Sonny, Commissioner Wheelock, I know you don't believe there should be any. You and I disagree about the dangerousness of that lake, and we probably always will. That having been said, right now, the water temperature around the Grand Traverse area is ranging between 41 and 45 degrees. If you're on a paddle boat, even with a life jacket, if you're in a boat, even with a life jacket, if you go into water at 41 to 45 degrees, in all probability you are going to last about 6 minutes due to hypothermia. A wetsuit will preserve body heat, and it does add buoyancy to a swimmer every single time. We feel the Parks Board feels that this is a fair compromise for people that do want to swim in the lake. This also gives the Parks Department an opportunity to sit down, because a swimmer will have to come in and sign a piece of paper saying that they are familiar with the rules and that they know the dangers of the lake. That's an opportunity for the Parks Department to educate swimmers. I look at it as a balance. It's not perfect, but I support it.
Yes.
Doctor?
Okay, is there scuba diving allowed in that lake?
Yes. We did not ban diving.
Okay, so these people with wetsuits on, I know when you've got a mask on and a snorkel, it's kind of hard to get down. Will they be wearing weights, some of them?
Divers wear weights.
It's up to them.
How about the open swimmers?
No, open swimmers don't wear weights.
Okay. I can see where Sonny's coming from, being a conservative, but on the other hand, we have had some innocent young people die that perhaps didn't, well, one I know didn't have good judgment. Then you've got these, I think it strikes a good balance for now. You're trying to limit the people that aren't using their judgment access to that water, and you're trying to let the people that have training, experience, and judgment and the right equipment have access to it. I think it strikes a balance. The other thing is, our park board recommends it. I'm not going to, at this point, usurp their recommendation.
Commissioner Wheelock?
The drownings that were earlier referred to were absolutely tragic accidents, but they were all, like you said, they had one thing in common. Young kids with cold water drownings and not necessarily accomplished swimmers besides. That's not anything that the county is responsible for. My concerns about this is, and then we're going to talk about having a waiver that they have to sign. Okay, if we draft a waiver and the swimmer signs the waiver and then goes out and gets themselves in trouble and drowns, are we responsible for any of that? And I guess that would be what, the question I would have for Chris. It just, the designated swim area, for anyone that doesn't know, it is less area than we have right here in this room. Probably about the area that's, confined by these desks. And most of that water is 6 inches deep. So, there just simply is not a designated swimming area there at all. As far as I'm concerned, you either open the lake up to water or you just don't let anybody swim in it. That's the two choices. Because the water, the designated swim area is simply a joke. There's no other way to describe it. It's not big enough for anyone to swim in. If you want to have a wading pond, you might as well put it up by, we talked once about putting in a water park up where we put the stuff up by the dormitory. That would probably make more sense than the designated swim area.
We have the equipment out there.
I know we have the equipment there. I'm very familiar with the equipment. But the long and the short of it is, Twin Lakes has been open for public swimming since it was designated as a park. 75 years ago probably the initial property was designated. And, we have 3 tragic loss of life in a matter of 4 years. So we come up with these rules that no one can swim in the lake unless they're within this wading pond. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I personally swam in that lake when I was a lot younger than I am today, along with all of my other friends. We used to swim from one beach to the other. We swam from side to side. I was a lot better swimmer and a lot senior then. But the fact is that this lake is like a lot of other lakes in our area. It has very designated cold water areas. It's very deep. It's really, really shallow where the designated swim area is, and then it becomes deep very fast. And when the water temperature is 40 degrees, your life expectancy is 3 minutes. Hands down.
Civil Council has advised me that we need a majority of commissioners serving, elected and serving. And we have 2 commissioners missing this evening. So with that in mind, I'm going to move to table this.
We get to do this again?
Yes.
And I'll bet I have the same thing to say
And he's
next
going to
week,
say
too.
the same thing all over again.
I've been saying the same thing since the rules started.
He's nothing if not consistent. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, old unfinished business. What?
Is that a motion, Tim?
Yes. I'm sorry, I moved to table. Is there support?
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. We're good. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate somebody keeping me on the straight and narrow. Old unfinished business, MERS. This is a housekeeping matter, and I would move to authorize the board chair and/or the county administrator to sign the attached documentation for implementation of the changes to the MERS plan and to submit any additional documentation necessary to effectuate changes approved by the Board of Commissioners on April 27th, 2016. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Civil Council, State Animal Control Code.
State animal control.
Commissioner Kropa, you
Yes,
have the floor.
Somebody had to bring back animal control, right? Commissioner Max Bauer and I have been working behind the scenes to solve our animal control situation. and we want to move forward with bringing some changes to the board that we think will be a solution for everybody. But in order to do that and do our due diligence, it requires our civil counsel's, well, a memo to help explain and help us understand the state animal control code. So when I contacted our civil counsel today, he suggested that the appropriate way to do this would be for a board motion to ask the civil counsel to create a memo that explains the animal control code so that the Board of Commissioners can use it when making decisions in the future on hopefully some requested changes.
Is that a motion?
I will make a motion to direct civil counsel to prepare a memorandum about the state animal control code.
I'll support. Discussion. Commissioner Wheelock.
I'm assuming that this memo will outline the county's responsibilities, legal statutory responsibilities in regard to the animal control code, correct?
No, that is not where we're going with this.
Well, you know, if we're talking about the county's policy, I think we need to know what our statutory responsibility is. That's an important piece of this discussion.
There is a state statute on the books about animal control. And what we are asking Mr. Forsyth to do is tell us what that state statute says and how our ordinance should be reflective of that state statute. That's it.
I guess my my thought would be is if we have a county ordinance, if we're talking about a county ordinance in regard to animal control, we need to have an understanding of what our statutory responsibility is in regard to animal control.
That's not what's in the state code. You should look it up and read it, because it's not.
I've done that, but
Yeah.
the point is, if you're going to have a discussion about a county ordinance, you need to talk about what the county's true responsibility is in regard to animal control. Chris, do you agree, disagree?
We can, you know, it's the dog law of 1919 that is what's controlling. We can look at that, and we can say, okay, for example, if you want to rewrite the ordinance, how do you rewrite it? What are the responsibilities of the animal control officers? What's their job? That's something we can be more than happy to look at and put in our memo.
Okay.
All right?
That is not what I asked for, though, in my motion.
Well,
However, we do have a motion on the floor.
I understand
So let's take care of that first.
I'm just asking for a friendly amendment, if you will, that this memo from the prosecutor, from civil counsel, includes a listing of the statutory responsibilities in regard to animal control that the county is responsible for.
I can add that to the motion, and that is from a different source than what my motion was about.
It's fine.
Okay.
But, you know,
All right.
do we want to vote on the amendment?
we-
We need to vote on the amendment before we vote on the motion?
We have,
Is it friendly?
it's a friendly one.
All right.
We're good.
You're okay, Chris?
Yes, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. This is our second opportunity for public comment. Second opportunity for public comment. Mr. Downer?
Am I correct in assuming that the Boardman Dam project is on the agenda?
We've already discussed it, Mr. Downer.
Okay. I'm sorry I'm late. I've read the proposal several times.
And Dave, will you please identify yourself for the
Oh,
record?
I'm sorry. My name's Dave Downer. I live at 1965 River Road West, Traverse City, Michigan. If I look a little nervous, I'm not. I'm petrified. In accordance with the most recent literature, 3 articles of which I sent to you last year, recommend that Any dam removal project have a post-dam removal phase included that addresses sediment control, erosion control, and bank stabilization. And it should be part of the overall engineering design and not a separate project. The Army Corps, come on baby, don't fail me now. The Army Corps of Engineers 100% final design engineering plan does not include any such phase. There are no plans to provide any soil erosion, sediment control, or bank stabilization efforts following the removal of the dam. The report also makes it very clear that there's no such funding for any phase of dam removal or river restoration. The Boardman Dam removal project should be able to serve as a bad example. As a result, 3.5 years later, after the river continues to pollute because of the lack of adequate erosion control, sediment control, or bank stabilization. Without these provisions in place, the Boardman Dam outcomes will be at least as destructive, if not worse. Given the increase in sedimentation from any such project, the effects, the already at capacity culverts at the South Airport Road will be at greater risk for flooding. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, they are at capacity, and in meetings in the past, engineers have expressed concerns about the fact that the South Airport Road crossing is at risk during any high water events, and that risk will be increased if they don't provide for some provisions to try to control the sediment from this project. Allowing this project to move forward, knowing in advance that this will violate numerous environmental laws and regulations, will also open the county up to litigation. Therefore, I am recommending that the Grand Traverse County Soil Erosion Department not grant a permit for this project to move forward as written. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Downer. Anyone else?
Norbert Tutlis, 4565 Buckhorn Drive, still. A couple of things I know. I talked to Carl Platts from the Army Corps of Engineers at the last meeting I was to at the Nature Preserve, and I asked him about the partnership agreement, which concerned me as a taxpayer in Grand Traverse County, knowing that we have a $15 million limit of liability on one particular subject, and even though some people have more confidence in the engineering that caused the flood, I have a concern that the engineering that went with the cheapest method of siphoning water instead of the more costly method of using a pump shakes my confidence when I hear these people trying to convince me that, trust us, I don't. The Corps of Engineers says any partnership they get into and any of their subcontractors are free from liability. Grand Traverse County cannot sue the Corps, they cannot sue this guy over here, nobody involved in it, they are free of liability. Now, I know that, but I also know that they usually require 35% and they can waive it, right? So they can do what they want, but I am very concerned, and thank you, Commissioner Kropel, for beating that drum. We have a tremendous liability, and yeah, what's been our track record? Wastewater treatment plant, splash pad, Boardman Pond, Boardman Dam. I'm not here to knock us. I'm part of that, and I buy that, and I own it. We did it. Let's not do it again. We got a chance to do it better. The DEQ has taken extra time with this application that we submitted, our county, because they got questions. Mr. Downer's trying to get the answers. They won't give him the answers. The answers don't exist. The answers that he's given are the old material presented with a different light, the same facts. The anglers of the Au Sable are borderline ready to get involved because of the offshore fish farms that are coming in. You haven't heard anything about the fish growing plant out at Boardman Pond that's anticipated to be put in by the DNR. They're going to drive posts in the ground, and they're going to raise fish out there. The last thing is, it concerns me about the tribe. I think they're my brother as much as I'm their brother, but the tribal membership of the Bay Mills Indian community, the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, and the Little Traverse Bay bands of Odawa Indians retained their right to hunt, gather, and fish in the 1836 treaty area, which includes the Boardman River watershed. I've asked myself, why is the band so concerned? Why are they involved? Why are they applying for money from Fish and Wildlife Service and donating a cause? Federal government can't give us money, but the band can, and they are. Why? Because they want to come in and fish. They want to harvest those fish. So you fishermen look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, bringing it back to the board. Commissioner reports. I want to let everybody know, have we talked about at the county board level 90 over 90?
No, I was going to say something if you didn't. Yeah,
we both need to. Because
fun.
Commissioner Kropa and I both went to the Senior Center Networks honoring 90 people over 90 years of age. And at my table, I was honored to sit next to Richard, whose nickname was Cupcake, who served at the Battle of the Bulge. And I know when I ran into Commissioner Klaus, I was talking to him about my conversation with Richard and his experiences at the Battle of the Bulge. And I have to tell you, this group of men and women were absolutely phenomenal, inspirational. Commissioner Kropa, describe the veterans at your table.
My table was great. I got to host a table of women from Garfield Township, and we had 2 widows of D-Day vets, and they liked to talk about their husbands and their service in France and what they did. And and 2 of the ladies at my table were retired TCAPs and had a lot to share about our school system as it started and grew up. And one of my favorite people was there. I had Mary Lautner, who is the family that donated the property for the observatory there that NMC has on Bermley Road, and their family's been there for over 150 years. And she used to be the Garfield Township recording secretary and would talk about typing everything and having to have it, and it was invaluable conversations. And as soon as I sat down, one woman said, "I know you from the paper." And then she went in about sewer rates and parkland sales, and just absolutely on the ball. I couldn't have had a better time. The Senior Center needs to be commended for what they did that day. These ladies and gentlemen felt very special, and they are. And it was really a great opportunity. And next year, they're going to do it again, and we really hope that we have a lot of people participating. But in total, we had 150 people there. 72 were our 90-year-olds, and of course, some had caregivers and family with them. And one of the ladies at my table was 96, and she had her 69-year-old daughter with her who is blind and deaf. She is still at home in the same house she raised her in, taking care of her. And when I talked to her about it, she said that her and her husband couldn't have children, so they wanted to adopt special needs babies. But back then, you could only have one. They wouldn't let you have more. And she said that was her greatest regret, was she didn't have more to take care of. And just, they were wonderful people. So kudos to Lori Wells and the Senior Center staff. And on that same note, today, if you didn't get out to the Senior Expo, that was crazy busy. Cars were parked for blocks around the Civic Center.
I'm told by Christine Erickson that there were 1,500 attendees today. Last year there were 1,200, so it seems to be growing in popularity.
It was an absolute success, and it was such a lovely day, and people would take their lunch, and they were all eating outside, and it was just really nice, and I'm just really proud of the Senior Center and what they do, but also we are just so happy to have them as part of our Parks and Recreation Network. And was talking to the employees today, and what I like about it is that, and not to discount the Commission on Aging at all, But I love that Parks and Recreation is now 0 through 100 plus. We don't designate, well, if you're 50 plus, you're going to recreate here, and if you're under 50, they put it all together, and it just is it's really been a great addition, and we are happy to have them on Parks and Rec.
The real benefit of the Senior Expo is they bring in vendors and sponsors. And that money that is generated from that Senior Expo goes to BASA, Bay Area Senior Association. And BASA donates that money to seniors that might need heating assistance, emergency medical bill, maybe dental work that they can't pay for. And it's that annual expo does a great deal of good behind the scenes that
it really does. We have got
people
great
need to be aware of.
resources.
So I
And
think
NMC Barbecue is this Sunday. Everybody knows. Great cause, great event.
Dr. Lathrop.
On Veterans Day last, we launched a campaign to name the VA clinic from now on forevermore, wherever they move, in honor of our only recipient of the Medal of Honor, Colonel Demis Craw. And I want to report to you that Dan Benechek introduced that bill, and with the support of every legislator in the state of Michigan. We had complete support. Now it's got to go to the Senate, and it gives me the chills. It's going to happen, and that's going to be a great moment where Colonel Craw's son is alive. When we have a ceremony, he'll be here, and the Jeep driver that was also honored, his son will be there too. So we've got some great plans to honor our local hero, and it's going to be accomplished, I'm confident. So I want to report that.
You deserve a great deal of credit. You stood out many a cold night with petitions out on Front Street asking for signatures, and I think isn't it wonderful when you see the fruits of your labor come to...
Yeah, God bless all those people that signed that. We, when you sign your name on a petition, I know I'm kind of wary about that. And I had some people walk past me, I'm not going to do it, and then they turned around and came back and goes, you know what, I'm going to sign this. So it's an honor to be part of this. And in honoring Colonel Carl, we honor all of our veterans sacrifice for the freedom to do what we're doing right now.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Last week at Long Lake Township's meeting, they honored their new fire department. As you all know, Long Lake Township withdrew from the Rural Fire Division as of January 1. They currently have 17 members. They were all honored last week. Included in that was the swearing in of their new formal fire chief. And all of a sudden, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, Andy, but I can't remember his last name. So that's one of those old person memories here. But the other thing that happened last week at Long Lake Township is annually they represent a Long Lake Township Citizen of the Year. And Chris McGarrah was named Citizen of the Year in Long Lake Township for this year. Chris is the Assistant Fire Chief. Chris was absolutely instrumental in Long Lake Township being able to create their own fire department and get the ISO people in and get the certification, get the specs put together for the new equipment that had to be purchased for us to get I'm assuming the final results aren't in, but the ISO inspection has been done, and I expect that we will see Long Lake Township's ISO rating go from probably somewhere, it's currently somewhere between 6 and 7, and I expect it to go down in the 3 range.
So you're going to see some insurance savings throughout the township.
That's the goal. You know, we're very blessed in Long Lake Township. We have a lot of water. So, you know, when we were rating our ISO rating county-wide from the rural division, the whole division had to be rated the same. Well, in Long Lake Township, we have so much more source for water that we can get our ISO rating down, and that should save our citizens in our community significant money in their health or in their fire insurance.
Wonderful. Anyone else? All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.